Welcome back, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast. That's right. It is Expedition Bye Valley, and we are talking Bigfoot in the Eldorado County tonight. That's right. All going to be followed up with a brand new Quasi theory, a new Camping Tips for Stupid, and at the very end, we'll follow it all up with a real Bigfoot encounter from the volcano Bigfoot, the Mount St. Helens story. That's right. That's all coming up right here on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. And I, indeed, am the host of this mess, the Reverend Jeff Kelly. That's right. I am fresh out of the woods as of yesterday. Sorry I had to delay the show a day. It was a 4-day excursion unlike any I have ever done before. It was a very private trip. Actually, there was only two of us on it. Me and the wife went, and it was incredible. Just to say the least, of just being out in that area. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. However, I do have a little bit of news to get through. Some interesting things happened on the way to the show this week. Let's take a look at those real quick. Now we'll get to those in just a little bit. New discovery could force us to rewrite the timeline of humanity. How many times have we heard that this year? It has to have been at least 100 articles where we've rewritten the timeline of humanity this year. By the way, people, the timeline of humanity has never been written. There is no timeline of you can't look it up. You can Google it, and there's like a whole bunch of holes missing in it, but it's sensationalism at its best. A new discovery on the ongoing quest to determine when our human ancestors migrated out of Africa has shifted the timeline back once again. Writing in Nature, a team of geologists, archaeologists, and paleoanthropologists, yes, word anatomy, describe a rich cache of stone tools unearthed from steep hillside in the Laos Plateau of north-central China. The 96 shaped flakes and unmodified hammerstones were found in 17 distinct sediment layers that date from 2.2 to 1.26 million years ago. So for 17 different sediment layers over a million years time span, they find the same types of tools. Doesn't that suck? Man, we went from bronze to iron to steel to titanium in a couple of 100 years. These poor bastards were stunted. Anyhow, until now, the oldest known hominid site outside Africa was in Georgia, Russia. Excavations at the site uncovered spectacular finds of the roughly 1.85 to 1.78 million old remains of multiple hominids and stone tools, wrote Mr. Kappelman, a biologist, anthropist at geology at University of Texas. Well, there you have it, folks. You know, we go back again and they find that they have no idea. And we're never going to have a clear picture of who left Africa and why and when. As I've said, my theory goes we left multiple times and became multiple different things and all mixed in the end. And here we are, Homo sapien. We'll talk about that again another time, I'm sure. Hey, here's a really happy ending story. Lions eat poachers looking to slaughter rhinos. Hell yeah, like straight up. A gang of poachers learned the merciless rules of nature when they broke into a South African game preserve to slaughter a herd of rhinos who were instead eaten by a pride of lions. A head and a number of bloodied body parts and limbs were found near the scene after at least 3 legal hunters were devoured by their predators. Staff at the Sibuya Game Reserve in Eastern Province, South Africa, called in a helicopter to search the area for more poachers. The 6 lions had to be tranquilized in order for police to venture into the area and recover the poachers' remains. The owner, Nick Fox, said as many as 3 poachers were eaten, according to the evidence. Yay, lions! This is for Cecil, man. This one's for Cecil. Okay. Again, AncientOrigins.net has a really great article. It was brought to my attention by Steve Coles, of course. I'm a fan of his. I hope he's a fan of ours. And the question becomes why the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film should concern scholars of human origins. And I was like, Ugh, God, really? Another one? Human origins and Bigfoot? Well, maybe. But as you get into this long and drawn out article, it makes a lot of sense. Perceptions of the Bigfoot film. And then you start to wonder who exactly wrote this article. Of course, it was written by the great Bill Munns. So, yeah, it really is an analytical look at Sasquatch and where it might fit into the great genealogy that is great primates. You know, gorillas, orangutan, uh, uh, all of the chimpanzees, humans. We're all great primates. We're all greater than all the lower monkeys. And Bigfoot, of course, would have to fit into that same type of category. Where I'm placing it is in the paranthropus, is in the beside human category, which we're kind of missing right now. We've always, along the human evolution, there's always been these paranthropus animals, apes that went along with the human development. But right now in our time, we don't have any that have been found or proven. And that's where I feel they fit into. But Bill Munns has a lot of great work. He's done a huge amount of Bigfoot research. And I'm really glad to see that he is still actively trying to improve upon the data that is Bigfoot research. So going along with that, Berkeley, of course, the California Alumni Magazine has put out another article. So why do big people believe in Bigfoot anyhow? Asks Chrissy Elliott. Relatively few people in or out of the field of science believe in Bigfoot, which I don't know that that's true anymore. I think it was 36% was the last time I checked, and that's not relatively few people. But a purported Bigfoot sighting would likely be met with the same level of credibility as discovering of Casper, Elvis, Tupac, or Santa Claus. She says it's only 16% of Americans that are Bigfoot believers, but you might just write them off as crazy. But contrary to popular assumption, folklore experts say Bigfoot believers may not be as irrational as you'd think. And of course, it goes right back into all the things about, why the outsiders don't believe in Bigfoot. But as an insider to the community, I would be appalled if I was an outsider to the Bigfoot community and I was just coming in to try and see if there was anything serious to look at in the Bigfoot world. It's difficult to find shows like this one because I'm small and I don't do sensationalized things and I don't bring you fake things and I don't bring you woo factors. There's nothing, supernatural about the things that I talk about because we're based in science and realism. And I love every single one of you that comes here to listen to me babble about this stuff every single week. But I'm trying to stay true to my roots in the fact that I don't care about my subscription numbers. I care about my subscribers deeply, but I don't care about the numbers. I don't care that you have more subscribers than I have. You are pulling bullshit to your people just to fill them with bullshit, and I don't want to do that. But if I was an outsider coming into this community right now, I would be lost because what's going to come up first? Well, you're going to come up with orb squatches and portal squatches and cloaking squatches, and that's all that's presented on TV anymore. If you're not a sensationalized Bigfoot expert, then they don't even want to talk to you anymore. If you don't have some type of woo to the Bigfoot phenomenon now, that's what everybody wants. It has to be this supernatural being that has abilities that no other creature on the planet has because it's somehow special. And it's just, I would have to walk away from it. I as an outsider, I would have to go, these people are just freaking crazy. And, I'm sure there might be something to it, a grain of salt, but I'm not interested in finding that grain of salt in this giant pile of shit. And saying that, I don't know why people believe in Bigfoot, but I've seen it. I know it's out there. You people that haven't seen it, well, I'm sorry for you that you might not take my word for it and you have to see it for yourself, but you got to do what I did this week and you have to put yourself in places where Bigfoot exists. And that's the only way you're ever going to see one. So with that, we're going to wrap up the news for this portion of the show. thank you for listening to me blabber on about my thoughts on some of this stuff. Hey, you know what's great though? We're back in action. And the great Dean Cooper has brought us a quasi theory from a quasi scientist. I'm stalling for a moment because I forgot to bring up his graphic. It was a long week, folks. I can't wait to talk about it. I really can't. But you know, we got to give them that's due their proper render under Caesar what Caesar's, as they say. So here you go, folks. Here's a brand new quasi theory from the great Dean Cooper. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
The Higher or Inner Planes, Episode 2. Last March, I did a quasi-dissertation that expanded on an idea from an earlier one. I quote myself. Last July, I did a quasi-explanation of karma. In it, I casually threw in the idea of a multi-layered universe. To quote me, the Hindu universe is multi-layered, much like modern quantum physics. There are dimensions within dimensions, with all those dimensions occurring in a substrate, a conscious substrate, technically called the Brahman. You can find these two on dissertations on my YouTube channel and on my blog, bydean.com. In Higher Planes, Episode 1, I went right to the top plane, the one where no thing exists, no individual thingy. All things exist in it, including the lower planes. The Sanskrit term for it is Brahman. The Brahman may be described as the limitless, undivided ocean of all consciousness or being, in which everything that exists, exists. The Brahman doesn't exist, it is existence. It isn't being, it is beingness. It has all things in itself. It is isness. It is where God does business. Now, how did the 6 lower planes evolve out of that which is no thing? They didn't. They are involved in it as an involute. They involved as opposed to evolved. The best simile, the best metaphor, metaphysical metaphor, is to imagine a circular pool of water with the sunlight shining on it. You drop a rock in the middle of it, watching the circle of ripples spread. They hit the edge of the pool and reflect back inward. If you dropped it from high enough, the rippling wavelets return on themselves, make a raised dimple in the center, and ripple out again. If you look down in the pool, you see that the wavelets in the water make shadows on the bottom. Sometimes, when the wavelets combine together, they focus the sunlight into a bright wave spot moving on the bottom. Let's get downright poetic about this and quote the Grateful Dead. Ripple in still water, where there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow. Okay, got that? Now let's modify the metaphor. Let's get rid of the sun. Make the pool a pool of light, the light of all consciousness. Get rid of the rock and think of the pool as being able to induce a movement within itself, and also limit how far that movement can go, so that the movement reflects back on itself. The Brahman is creating internal shock waves within itself. Those waves have much the same behavior as those in the pool, creating shadows, creating brighter spots, creating apparent divisions within the ocean of all consciousness. Look up some videos of the Mythbusters blowing things up. And they're really big explosions. When they slow the frame rate down, you can see the shock waves rippling through the air. The Big Bang started in the mind of God. You may read the text of this on my blog at bydean.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Well, there you have it. Quasi theories from a quasi scientist, Mr. Dean Cooper. And since we are back and live once again, you know what? We've got a brand new Camping Tips for Stupids to go right along with that. That's right. From the Gone Camping channel and the mind of Jevin Moore. That's right. Here is some Camping Tips for Stupid, number 67.
Camping Tips for Stupids. Tip number 67. Getting hurt while camping can suck. Cutting your finger, swinging an axe into your leg, or getting dominance humped by a dog man. Injuries can occur when you least expect it. Having a medical kit in and around your campground can be the difference between smiling and not smiling, or having a good time, or crying like a grown adult man baby because you have a boo-boo. Okay, that's more than a boo-boo. Typically, your kit should include items to deal with things like scratches, scrapes, cuts, as well as insect bites and stings, along with painkillers and antiseptics. But you also might want to plan for the worst, such as profuse bleeding out of a deep gash that a bear might have gave you when he was trying to put you in his stomach. So you might want to pack that gash with gauze and use something like an Israeli bandage and such to control the bleeding and stabilize the wound. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately. All in all, getting hurt hurts. I know. My first camping trip in years and I get stung by a damn wasp. I cried because it turned me into a damn adult man baby. Pain can destroy even the strongest of men. Shut up. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids. Remember to spay and neuter your idiot population.
Well, there you have it, folks. Camping tips for stupids. Med kits are no joke. I've got one. I've got an IFAC, which is a military infantry first aid kit. And it has an Israeli bandage in it too, because the American bandages are too damn expensive. Get them expired off of eBay. It's okay that they're expired. Nobody cares. They still work. It just means that the military has to buy them buy them new. Anyhow, if you don't have a first aid kit, please get one. They're like the most important thing that I put in my kit, in my car, in my back. If you see me walking around with my camo pack on, it's got my first aid kit in it. I just don't play games because getting hurt in the wild is no joke. That is for sure. All right, folks. Now is that time that I really love. I get to see who's out here watching the show tonight live with me and say hello to each and every one of you. So here we go, sir. We've got Mr. Lance Windsor. There he is. He is hanging out tonight with us. Mr. Rod Dupree. He's always in the place to be. Mr. Shane Barber, Cryptid Monster. How you doing there, Chief? James the Grower. There you are, sir. So glad you are hanging out with us. There's the Brown Dwarf. That's right. So cool that you are there as well. Timothy McCune, how are you? I know there's a Keith Harden hanging out with us as well. I saw Don Rife check in with us a little while ago. Hello there, sir. Let me scroll down here just a moment here. I know something's going on here. Mr. Jonathan Dowdy, how you doing there, champ? He's checking in with us as well. And then there is more people down there. There's Miss Natalie Smith. How you doing? So glad you are with us. I hope you are feeling well and healthy. Hot diggity dog diggity. I know what you do to me. I am doing well, Spike Jeff. Thank you for asking, sir. Jeremy Harrison. There he is. I'm here. You're there. Let's make the whole thing awesome. Asderland Drake. Hello there. So glad you are with us as well. There's Mr. Jevin Moore, the gone camping hero. How you doing there, Slick? I know the kid. Oh, excuse me. I had something all over my nose there for a moment. Oreo Cream Walk. She's back to watching us live. How you doing there, Leanne? So glad to see you. I know that there's going to be a Timothy McCune. How you doing there, champ? Glad you're checking in with us. Cheryl Willen, there she is. She ain't pancakes. Nope, it's definitely not pancakes. Sam Squanch Rivera, there he is. How you doing there, sir? So glad you are there and well. That's right. Happy Thor's Day. It is exactly that, a Thor's Day. Thank you for reminding me there, Don. I know there's more people down here. I'm just getting. Hey, Frankie Garrido, how you doing? Things are well. Thanks for asking. Just tired from the trip. Man, let's see. There's more people down here. Obsidian Radio is checking in. Hello there. 2 more campouts are going to be happening yet this year, people. So if you want to go camping with the Rev, you're going to have a chance in July and a chance in August. Maybe a late trip in September. We'll see what the snow looks like. Gandalf the White. There he is. How you doing there, sir? Thou shall not pass. I have a picture of that later on coming up here. It's kind of funny. Can Scrunch. How you doing there? Or is that Can Squatch? Can Squatch. That's what I never really paid that. John Leland. There you are. That's right. Yay, Lions. Nom, nom, nom. Nate, them damn poachers. That's so funny. I love the fact that they, hey, they deserved it. I'm scrolling down here because there's more people. If you haven't said hi to me yet, and I haven't mentioned you yet, then that probably means that you haven't texted here in the chat. We're live tonight, Thursday night, but usually we're here Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific. Timothy McEwen, if I haven't said hi to you yet, I most certainly just did, but THC does affect the short-term memory. Mr. Fang, 33. Good morning, Vietnam. No, this is not Vietnam. That is for sure. I am just about to the bottom of this mess. So I hope I said hi to you. If I didn't, kick into the text box and I'll say hi to you before the end of the show. There we are, people. Okay, let's show you where it was that I was at this week. We were originally going to do a 3-day expedition down there, but we turned it into a 4-day. We went on Sunday through Wednesday down to the Pai Valley, west of Sacramento. Here, let's give you an idea of the whole thing here. We'll scroll out. Give you an eyeball of where we are. We're still in the Eldorado County. We're still with the Eldorado Bigfoot Watch. But as you can see, it's out there. It is almost as out there as, well, actually, it's a little further out there than we were at the Black Oak Campground at the Stumpy Reservoir. We are deep in about 6 miles from any main road. You go 6 miles in on forestry roads to get to this campground that runs a little valley along some pretty high ridges, around 6,000 feet. If I back out just a little further here, I think we can show you where we are. Placerville, Folsom, and Sacramento is right here. So we're basically just due west of Sacramento, going up into the Sierra Nevadas. Stumpy is right there. That's where the Stumpy Reservoir is. And from this location to this location, as the crow flies, is probably, well, we can probably find out. Let's see here real quick. From here, it's supposed to do that. From here, let's see here. Come on. Measure distance from here to here. And we are only talking 24 miles as the crow flies. But to get to it, you have to drive all the way back out and then all the way back in. So it's actually 3-hour one way to change locations. However, the Sasquatch that are known to be in the Stumpy area could easily walk here across these ridges in a day and a half if it really wanted to. So saying that, you can understand why it is that is where the second location is all burned out. Unfortunately, there just isn't forest around it enough to call it viable research at this point. However, Driving into the Pi Valley was an eye opener. All the way west of Sacramento, we haven't had any rain here since probably the last snow in May. To be honest with you, it might even have been June when we got the last snow. We won't see rain again here until probably September or October. So everything's dead, dry. All the grasses are brown. There's no wildflowers. There's no nothing. But start to drop into some of these valleys that are running with these rivers inside of them. They just become these lush, full green areas that are just unbelievably fertile with everything. Here, let me change screen shares for you, and I can show you some of the area that I have. I have so much stuff on so many cameras. I haven't been able to get them all centralized, but I did manage to pull some directly from our camp itself. The area is vast, millions of acres. I mean, just ridiculously vast amount of acreage that's out there. The 6 miles in and the 6 miles out are all off-highway vehicle trails, motorcycle trails, quad trails, and things. However, people don't really venture much off of those trails, and there are stories that come directly from people who use those off-highway vehicles on those trails as well. Anybody who's been to Bluff Creek or sees the videos of stuff of Bluff Creek, there's this pool where people go swimming and bathing out behind the camp at Louse Camp. This is nearly an identical location type of thing in the Consolimus River, right at Pi campground out at the third loop in the back is where we stayed. We stayed back on Site 51, which is like 40 yards from the river. I mean, and this river was as crystal clear as you can imagine. There's a trout right there. 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 Unfortunately, I didn't get to catch any of these because this was the swimming area. So pretty much as soon as the temperature hit 85, this whole 8-foot pool of water was filled with people. There were 10, 12, 14 people at a time that would just come up here and scare all the fish. So they weren't catchable at this particular trip. However, had some Sasquatch. I had some coffee in my Bigfoot Coffee Company cup. Look, we did encounter some strange hair-covered beasts. These are free-range cows. Apparently, there's 450 of them in the area up there. The cattle ranchers are allowed to do. We chased these guys for a good mile before they finally found a path that they wanted to take off down. Literally, they were just trucking along at 5 miles an hour, just doing whatever the cows do until they finally got out of their way. Cook Station is as you can see, it's a saloon dining store. It has a small bar. It has some candy bars and some soda to buy, but they did have a full menu of food, which was nice. This is one of two of the original wagon stations that were along Highway 88. But Highway 88 is actually the wagon trail to Carson City. This is about 8 miles from Pi Campground. It comes out of the valley. It's at about 5,100 feet. And if you run straight up 88, it runs through the Carson Pass and out into Nevada and then up to Carson City. If you guys remember me talking about Bassett Station out in Plumas National Forest, of course, that too was a wagon station, was a stagecoach stop. And there used to be one of these every 5 miles along Highway 88 because it was the cattle drive. And they could really only drive those cattle about 5 miles a day. The neat thing was originally they had a brothel upstairs, a hotel on the side, a saloon and a bathhouse in this particular station, of course. So you could come inside and go get a shower or go get a bath, change your clothes in a hotel room, come eat a meal, and then go have a whore because that was the thing to do on a cattle drive, I guess. I'm not sure. But the Cook Station is it's one of those trips that you have to take out of the valley to go see because it was worth it. It was a fun little ride. Much like Uncle Tom's Cabin, again, is the same type of a location on that trail there outside of Stumpy Reservoir. It's exactly the same type of experience. Only it didn't have a bunch of drunk bikers in it. That was very strange out there at Uncle Tom's. This was the view, literally from my fire pit, looking across, and just beyond that picnic table there is the river, is the drop into the river, and it's only 25 foot down. It's been drenched in there pretty good. The pine trees are so old growth; it's never been logged. There's no big there aren't thousands of stumps everywhere. I mean, this is really, really pristine, dense coverage. There's the Rev with a selfie off the camera. What I was actually trying to show everybody was the steep hill that rose out behind our campground is, one of those canyon walls. It was literally an elevation climb of probably 150 feet to the top of it. It was nice to know that there was a barbed wire fence that ran along the top of that ridge to keep the cows out of us. But for sure, it was a steep incline behind our site, and our site was the very last site inside of the campground. Hey, if you don't have an official member sticker, you can go out to redbubble.com and go to /members/Bigfoot Watch and get your official member sticker right there for the Eldorado Bigfoot Watch. Thousands of songbirds everywhere, incredible robins. We had a camp robin that we were literally in his hunting territory. I had brought a bunch of baby night crawlers to fish with, but unfortunately, like I said, by the time I would get warm enough for me to get out there and mess with the water to fish, there was a bunch of people swimming in there. So we set the worms loose in camp for the local robins to come and find, and we literally had a in-camp robin that was amazing. As the week went on, he just got closer and closer and closer to us, to where he was sitting outside of camp. There's one of the wind damage from the snow load this year. I tried to count the rings, but when I got to 117, I quit because I just didn't feel like counting anymore. So that thing was probably 50 years old at the very least. They have everything really nicely laid out at camp. There's Mr. Robin, and he's got something in his mouth. What's that look like? A baby nightcrawler to me. The campground itself has a bunch of day use areas where you can get in and out of the river, and it's free. There's absolutely no day use fee to it whatsoever. You can go in and park in any of the day use areas and get into the river. You can gold mine, you can swim, you can just relax. There's the old tent set up there, nicely. This particular, like I said, this particular site is on a giant hill, but they take the time to make in a level flat platform for a pretty decent sized tent, allowing you to set it up that way. Plenty of firewood downed, and anything down and dead you can burn. So we burnt the living crap out of all of it. There you go. There's a tree. He had to reach for the sky. Reach for the sky, partner. However, there was one thing that was just hanging out in camp. There we go. The Reverend here, this is the first pictures that have been taken of the Reverend in 90 days since he started his lifestyle food change. And I've lost considerable amount of weight. I have no idea how much. I haven't been on a scale. I don't really care about scales. But this is down at the river itself. It looks shallow. However, that's very deceptive, as right there in the center of it's about 4 foot deep, and it goes up to about the middle of your knees from there. But did a lot of hiking. I mean, miles and miles of hiking. But the river is just perfect for just chilling at, looking at, swimming in, doing whatever you want to it. It really was just an amazing place to be camped next to for 4 nights. Yeah, the Reverend's a tough man. I know it's vicious. But the last thing I wanted to share with you guys was something I had never seen anywhere in California until this particular week while we were out there. I'll talk about the investigations that we did in just a minute. My puppies were with us, of course, as well. The camp is laid out about a mile along the river, onto a 90-degree turn uphill. And the river descends about 100 to 150 feet along the campground. So from the entrance of the campground to all the way to the backside where we were is about 150-foot gain in elevation. And, there's little rapids and little waterfalls all along the river there that runs. Some really nice white quartz. I've got a piece here I'll show you in just a minute, especially for Rodney, because Rodney will know exactly what that means. But that's what I was looking for. That's Pi Creek. We crossed over Pi Creek that goes into it. There are a number of creeks that run right into the river right here. The food availability was insane. We saw fawn and deer. There were signs of bobcat and bear everywhere. There were lots of squirrels. We heard a hoot owl. No great horned owls, which I was surprised of, as there was a lot of rodents around, which would have attracted them. But maybe they were just quiet itself. It is definitely hard to say. There's Mr. Robin, and he's hunting again. But this little feller right here, the California Stellar Jay. I went up to the vault in the morning, real early. Got up really early every morning. I tend to do that on investigations, but I saw this flash of blue in the tree, so I just stopped and stood there for quite some time until he came down out of the tree and started bouncing around on the ground. And I went back to camp and I told the wife, I'm like, I just saw the most beautiful blue bird with a giant black pompadour. And she giggled at me. She goes, that's the Stellar Jay. And I had never seen one on as many trips as I've been around in California. This is the very first time I'd ever actually seen one. And he is just absolutely fantastic. So here, let me share. Now, Rodney, you'll know exactly what that is. It's even got some specks of color on the back side of it, but that was about the best that I came up with in all of the pans that I went through. Unfortunately, like I said, there was a lot of people swimming in the area. I didn't want to pick up the water for people that were out there and enjoying it for that. And the lower areas were not as conducive to mining, so I'll have to go another week when it's not quite so busy to do some of that, or move further down the river where another location would be. I might have to ask some gold miners that I know where a better place might be along that river. But I did find some solid white quartz with little tiny specks of color in it. So we all know that gold travels with quartz. And so I'm hopeful on the next trip back that we'll be able to do a little bit more gold mining. But let's go back to the Pi Valley itself here. Now, this is a little deceptive because the camp is not actually there. The camp is actually directly on the river itself. Now, all of these canyons that you see around here are 6,000, 6,200 to going east, much, much, much higher, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, all the way up to 10,000 feet. But that's all snow coverage. Again, this is an area that is below the snow line. And although the roads get snowed in that would get you here, the valley itself is pretty much snow free for much of the season itself. Nothing really sticks there. It may snow there for 10 or 12 days, but then you're going to get freed up. Now, where we actually stayed was back here on the back side of the campground, literally right here on this 90-degree turn. Here's that deep pool where all those fish were. And then here's a drop in altitude. This was all rapids that ran down into another pool and again run down into rapids. Everywhere you see that looks like it's bare is not bare at all. This is a flowing river that runs. Everything is dropping in altitude from the places you can't see. Our camp is actually like right here. It's literally just ridiculously close to the river itself. But this entire valley is just so green and lush all of the time. There's one piece of private land right behind it. The rest of it is actually national forest land. And I got a chance to talk to this guy. It was weird when I brought up the subject of gold mining. He was all about talking about it. But when I brought up the subject of Bigfoot, he kind of closed down real quick. He was like, "Well, who are you with?" I was like, "What do you mean, who am I with? I'm with me." He's like, you're not with the Rangers or anybody like that. I'm like, no, I'm just, investigating Bigfoot, in the valley. And I'm trying to talk to people who have been here a while and to see whether you guys have any weird things that you'd like to. Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about anything. And he literally closed the door to his truck and drove off. It was very odd. That he kind of closed down that fast. This particular meadow that's right here is completely lush and full. The animals were in there eating. The birds were in there eating. The fish are wild trout. They're 6 to 8 inches long, and I could very easily see a Sasquatch standing in the shallows and just kind of picking some of these suckers right out, because while we were swimming in the shallow end of it, I felt a couple of them bump up against my leg. So they're not exactly the smartest animals on the planet whatsoever. That is for sure. Now, getting to the Bigfoot aspect of it, from the campground itself, there is all this altitude climb. We actually went out and went to Escalante Flats, which is up the north-south road at about, and it runs out into a motorcycle track that's out there. A couple of large group off-grid campsites are available out there, and we could actually set up an expedition in the altitude and come down and visit Pai to swim and clean up and enjoy the river itself, seeing as how they don't charge anybody for it. However, let's move on here to just a little bit. 2 campers take photos of what they see in the trees in the Eldorado National Forest, July 2014. It's a BFRO report. Wow. Sorry, my throat really just is getting there. Sometime in the night, probably 1 to 4 a.m., my girlfriend woke up saying she heard something jumping into the river about 50 feet away. It sounded like the person's legs were sloshing against the water. After she whispered this to me, I heard the noise too. She was accurate in her description of the sound. I guess my protective instincts kicked in, because without hesitation, I unzipped the tent with my large mag light in hand. And stood outside my tent, spotlighting the riverbank and the forest around us. I saw nothing. So I climbed out, and there were people, and said, please go the other way, and still heard nothing. After that, we didn't hear any more unusual sounds. What struck me as odd was, why would anyone be walking in freezing cold like glacier runoff water in the dark morning hours? Not anywhere near any of the trails, and not anywhere near any roads. We had to hike to this spot, and it's a mile from our car down a very steep, heavy forested hillside full of underbrush, which is the spot was so hard to find. It was an accidental find, and that's why it stays secluded. It had me pondering in the last few months, and what brought me to considering maybe it was a Bigfoot, because it sounded like 2 legs, not the way a bear would sound trudging through the water. Plus, there was nothing in the river I could see, so whoever or whatever would have had to have been farther than we thought, and therefore very large to make the sound seem so close. The next morning, we went for a long hike, as it was our last day camping. We had just gotten back to the car when I looked back at the tree line and we had just come out of, a sort of last glance, and I will miss you type of look. As I saw, I first thought it was a black bear in the very top of a 60 to 70 foot pine tree. It was staying still, but I could see it wiggling a little bit, almost like it was positioning itself comfortably, and it looked like it was hugging the tree like a bear. But then I saw a second bear in the same spot as this one in a tree right next to it. And at this point, about 500 feet from these things and the trees they were in, I was able to take many photos of these bears, and I have them on my phone and will send them to anyone who wants to see them. On closer inspections, these were not bears. I showed a few friends and family, and they see what it seems to be a uniform jet black silhouette of a large, lean human Man. And when you see the pictures, you can get the odd feeling that these were definitely not human beings. Those are the kind of stories that this is the type of river that they run exactly off of. Let's see here. I saw one. Let's see here. 2001, June 16th, Eldorado County, California, in the National Forest. All I saw was a really big, tall thing that looked like a man, but it was covered with hair. And then it ran from us when it saw us, crossed over the river, and up the other side. When I saw it, and when my friend were down in the forest behind his house, we were about a mile away from a little creek that runs into that same river. Before it saw us, it was sitting by the creek in the other direction. Let's see here. I know there's another one here specifically to this area. Yeah, there it is. Sorry. It's the highway that runs on 88, which was right outside that 6-mile climb. And the 6-mile climb is actually only probably 2 miles as the crow flies directly up the canyon wall. But of course, you have to use switchbacks to go back and forth. Directly off of Highway 88, going out towards Silver Fork, which is exactly where we were talking about. Tonight, me and the husband were driving on Highway 88, and we noticed an 8 to 10-foot hairy creature on the side of the road, just standing there looking at us while we were driving home. We had driven that highway enough to know that this was not the unusual thing to see. We have seen several deer only, but I couldn't believe what we had just seen. I'll never drive the highway at night ever again. It literally scared me. I'm just curious if any other drivers noticed this big creature on the side of the road. The time was between 10 p.m. to 10:30 on July 11th, 2009, and it was on the side heading towards Sacramento. It was 3 to 5 miles after the Silver Fork. We had just noticed a small herd of deer about a mile away. There were 2 other witnesses as the passengers in the car. And my husband heard of other sightings in the same area, but I never did. I talked to the camp host quite a bit while we were down at the campground. They were very, very hospitable. This place was impeccably maintained by the camp host. I mean, it really, really was. I can't express the amount of gratitude I had to those people. There was supposed to be running water on the site, which is one of those things that we like to look for when we go to the campgrounds. And unfortunately, when we got there, the running water was broken. However, they did supply us with enough drinking water for the time that we were there. The other campers that were there, everybody was courteous. Everybody was polite. It was nice. There were hikers everywhere. There were just people willing to talk. I did talk to a few people who had spent a lot of time there along this particular area, Somerset and in the area. And, the old timers tell you that they migrate through here. They come and they go. It all depends on where the food is. And, from there on, they move out. So again, like I'm thinking, they're going to be in these early locations when the food is available in the spring and the summer, and then they're going to move up to the higher elevations where food is prospering later in the summer and early into the fall. But they're going to have to return to these lower valleys to winter it out, because it's really the only place that there is food. It's the same reason that the deer come down. It's the same reason that the coyotes come down. Now, the first night we were out there, it was pretty quiet, which was eerie. Like nothing. There were we had the back end of the camp loop to ourselves. We didn't have a camper within probably 100 to 150 yards of us. And all you could really hear was the river, the creepiness of the river. I told the wife, I said, now be careful. You're going to be hearing the river sirens whispering to you. Don't go wandering off towards the river by yourself to find the people down there talking. There aren't any people down there talking. That was Sunday. We had done a little bit of this, just exploring the campground itself. Monday morning we got up, and that's when we went out to Cook Station, and we took a real long drive out the forestry roads that surround the river there. and it's rough country. We got up several roads and decided to turn around and come back out because they just weren't maintained enough. They're not traveled at all. When I talk to the camp hosts and I talk to the other people, they're like, yeah, no, we don't really drive around out here. We just kind of come to the campground and hang out. It's just a chill, nice little spot. And I totally agree with them. I mean, it really was. Several of the campers thought, that they'd heard hoops and hollers and things in the woods around them. But one particular night, I could hear the cowbells. I think it was the last night that we were there. There were a bunch of cows moving around, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I hear a whoop, and the cows just kind of stopped. Now, cows don't whoop. Cows moo. I mean, we know that. And these weren't actually cows. These were actually steer or cattle, because most of them were bulls. And then they started up again, and then a whoop, and it stopped again. The cowbells unfortunately ruined the audio that I have on it. I'm going to try and clean it up like the other cowbell audio that I have, and then I'll see if I can't reveal that on another show. For the grips of it, no. Did I see a Bigfoot while I was out here in the Pi Valley? Absolutely not, and I didn't expect to on this first trip out here with the number of people that I had. However, the people in the area feel strongly that there's no reason that they wouldn't be. There are known sightings, road crossings, and unexplained noises that run back and forth across the river. And there's so much water here year round. This would be a place that I would want to hang out if I were a critter like that too. So with that, I've already gone long on this, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. 100%, if you ever want to come out and go to the Pi campground or the Pi Valley and go camping, you should. The river is fantastic. Let's make plans and go together, because I want to go back. The wife is already talking about maybe next month just doing an overnighter there just to go play in the river. I was like, for that, we can drive out there for the afternoon. It's only 2 hours away. That's right, man. It was a really, really fun trip. Let's get some last late check-ins. I see the Reverend Matthew Gaines has finally decided to join us tonight. I know. We're not usually on Thursdays. I just couldn't do it last night. Mr. Forrest Kopp, how are you there, sir? I am so glad that you are with us as well. I think Racing, how you doing there, champ? You checking in with us as well. And I think that's the last of who I may have missed for the evening. So with that, everybody, I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I have a real Bigfoot encounter for you. Like I said, we're going to have another camp out in July and another one in August. So there's still plenty of opportunity to go camping with the Rev. For now, enjoy this real Bigfoot encounter, and we will see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. So thanks so much for being here. I'm the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and may the Squatch be with you. Welcome to another edition of Real Bigfoot Encounters with Reverend Jeff. This week's story comes to us from the home of many famous sightings, Skamania County, Washington. It's in the shadows of Mount St. Helens. Researchers have a run-in with something they can't explain. Let's hear his story. My name is John. I've been Bigfoot researching for more than 35 years. I've found many tracks and much evidence of the creature, but never once have I seen it. My friend Tom and I decided it was time to take our Bigfooting to the next level. We've lived in Skamania County for a couple of years now, and the stories based around Ape Canyon were just too much to ignore. Now we've decided it was time to get up into the area and just see what we could find. Tom and I packed up our gear and headed out for Ape Canyon. We had the maps and the GPS numbers, but getting into the canyon was no easy task. The miners that had their encounter here must have really been hard men, as the hiking alone just about killed us. We arrived at the entrance to the canyon just about mid-afternoon. The exact location of the cabin attack had been lost throughout the years, so we hiked up nearest the location as we could gather and began to set up camp. Most of our gear was made up of audio and video gear, as we were really hoping to have an encounter, or at very least to collect some audio of the unknown calls, so we waited for night to descend. The first night we were there was just absolutely dead. It was as if the world had simply shut off. The sky was clear, the temperature had dropped down into the low 40s. We made Bigfoot calls and tree knocks a few times that night. We heard nothing in return, so we just sat and talked quietly around the fire. The next morning, Tom and I hiked up the canyon a bit to get a vantage point of our camp. Once we gained some elevation, we realized the berries were ripe on the slopes, and that there was a small pond over the hill behind our camp in just the same location. We noticed a lot of wildlife activity on the sides of the canyon as we hiked up the area all day. Eventually, we made it over to the berries and to the pond and noticed the game trails were heavily in use, and just about everything in the area came to the pond to drink, so this would be our target for the night. We went back to camp, and we geared up just about dusk and moved to the vantage point over the pond and settled in. A few hours later, we saw a pack of coyotes invade the pond, yipping and hollering as they do. Shortly after they moved off, Tom, who was listening to the parabolic mic, heard something big coming towards the pond. Moments later, a large body appeared from the woodline. We thought it was a bear as it was on all fours and approached the pond, and my camera couldn't zoom in far enough to get any real detail on just what it was. Tom said he could hear it drinking from the pond as it disturbed the water. Just then, something caught the animal's attention, and that's when everything changed. We both sat there in amazement as what we thought had been a bear drinking stood up on two legs, tilted its head back, and let out a blood-curdling howl, almost exactly like the ones you hear in the Bigfoot documentaries. It stood there, wavering back and forth, stepping in place. Tom said he could hear it grunting and making soft whoops. It walked back towards the woodline, and we expected it to disappear, but instead, it snapped off a low-hanging branch and smacked it 3 times on the tree, followed by another loud whoop I could actually hear with my ears. Just a couple of minutes later, 2 smaller creatures came into view, both walking on their hands and legs like a gorilla might do, and they approached the pond and drank as well. The animals were no doubt comfortable with the drill, as the larger creatures stood watch over the smaller ones. I kept trying to get a good view of them on the camera, but there just wasn't enough light to make out what they were. I managed to snap a few frames, but they turned out to be just nothing but dark, blurry forest. Just then, Tom repositioned himself and snapped a small branch. The sound echoed down the canyon walls and spooked the creatures at the pond. The larger animal scanned the hillside, and I swear it looked directly at us. Just then, it screamed out in a shriek, and the young ones bolted into the woodline, followed quickly by the adult. We sat there stunned as if we were in shock at what we had just witnessed. We maintained our location until the sun came up. Nothing else had even moved through the area after the shriek of that Bigfoot rang out. As soon as we could, Tom and I made our way over to the pond to check out the tracks and hopefully get some evidence of the encounter. We were so disappointed to find the ground near the pond was mostly loose stone and hard packed clay, not leaving any prints we could cast. We followed the disturbances into the woodline, hoping maybe the ground was better there, but it seemed the creatures had escaped without a trace. I picked up the branch that the creature had broken from the tree and used to knock with. It was at least 25 pounds and 8 feet long, but it didn't look that big in the creature's hands the night before. I searched it for hair, but again, nothing was left behind. We would have been satisfied with the audio and blurry picture we managed to capture this time around. We'd have no choice. We made our way back to camp and started to pack up our gear, when from the distance on the other side of the pond, a single tree knock rang out. We were plumb out of time, and a long hike out of the canyon ahead of us just didn't give us the ability to go follow up on it. We hiked out of the canyon and back out to the truck. We always had the feeling of being watched the whole way back, but never a glimpse of anything that day. We go back to this location often, but we've yet to see them again. For these men, being in the right place at the right time gives them a view they will never forget. For me, it was another fantastic, real Bigfoot encounter. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you. And with that, that's tonight's show, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. A big shout out to Christopher, and of course, Cassie, the Squatch Box. We will talk to you guys soon. There'll be a hangout here. I'll post in the chat in just a moment. And thanks, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next week.